All right, balaclava, here we go, representing the school. Second lesson, still on ratio, but now we're going to talk about percent. Percent, I told you before, is still a ratio. It's proportional reasoning. Rate's the same, scale is the same. It's all proportional. So today, percent. We're going to look at a couple of ideas here. Percent of a number and percent is a number. Okay? I've picked the same two numbers. Look, 40%, 60. Over here, 40%, 60. We're going to see what happens when we talk about percent of a number compared to percent is a number. So, here we go. Well, first of all, percent means out of 100. If you think about the word per, it means out of, right? If I said per hour, per gram, per whatever, it's out of something. So this is out of 100. Cent in French, 100, it means it's out of 100. So percent always means out of 100. Okay, here we go. So percent of a number, 40% of 60. I want you to think of this as a fraction, right? When I say 40%, I'm going to show you three ways to do this, by the way. 40% means 40 out of 100. So the first thing we're going to do is put that down. 40 out of 100. That's what this means. We're going to find an equivalent ratio. The 60 over here, it needs to go somewhere, right? It needs to go on the top or on the bottom. And it all depends on how does it relate to the percentage thing that we're talking about. 40% of 60, does that sound like the 60 is the whole number, like the 100% number? Or does that sound like 60 is the 40, right? This is what you got to consider. Now, 60 is the 100% number. 40% of 60 is going to be much smaller than 60. Think about it, right? Just like 40 is smaller than 100. So 60 goes down here. When we talk about 40% of a number, the number that we're dealing with is down here. Okay, now we look at relationships. It's always something there, right? This one's not quite as easy, but we're looking to solve this unknown up here. Okay, so we're moving from the left to the right. 100 becomes 60, 40 becomes whatever. Or we're moving up. 100 becomes 40, the same way 60 will become this. The relationship here, once you find out, you can find the relationship here. 100 divided by 40, it's 2.5. So how does 100 become 40? I divide by 2.5. That's the multiplier. I'm dividing by 2.5. So here, I divide by 2.5. It's going to be the same thing. Now here, it's not that easy to think of the numbers. The number facts aren't, because we've got some decimals there. But what it ends up being is 24. Right? 60 divided by 2.5 is 24. So, therefore, 40% of 60 is 24. Here's a second way of looking at it. And this is probably going to be the way that you use most often. 40% of 60. We take our percentage, convert it to a decimal. You know how you do that? 40 divided by 100. Becomes 0.4. Of always means times. Remember when you're talking about first learning multiplication and your teachers would always say, hey, boys and girls, what's 2 groups of 3? Of means times. 2 groups of 3 is 6. That means 2 times 3. So of means times. 40% as a decimal. This is the standard form of the number. That's the true value of 40%. It's the true value of 4 out of 10 or 40 out of 100. That's the one we want to use when we start calculating. So 0.4 times 60. Okay? Guess what? That's still going to be 24. Okay? So here's change your percent to a decimal and multiply. Okay? The other is cross multiplication. And we've talked about this a little bit before. And if we haven't, then here it is. 40%. 40 out of 100 is equal to, it's kind of like the same start over here. We got to decide where the 60 goes. We already decided it goes on the bottom. But here, I'm going to give you a variable. We'll call it x. Okay? Now, when we talk about cross multiplication, think about this. Make a little x out of the numbers that are diagonally situated across from one another. And here's how we go. We look where the variable x is. It's 100 and x. So I say 100 times x. So 100x is equal to 40 times 60. Okay? So 100x is equal to 40 times 60. So 100x is equal to 2400, right? When I multiply that out. And now we're using algebra. You thought we were done with it? We're not. How do I get to 1x? I divide both sides by 100. Okay, remember, if I'm multiplying by 100, if I divide by 100, they cancel out. I'm left with x equals, and when I divide 2400 by 100, I get 24 again. So 24 cross multiplication, 24 converting to decimal, 24 using equivalent ratios. The answer is 24. 24 is the 40% of 60. Okay? Now I want you to compare that to, now this is percent of a number. Compare that over here to percent is a number. 40% of something is 60. I'm trying to find out what that something is. I start the same way. I'll do the same type of methods here. 40% as a fraction or a ratio is, now 60 needs to go somewhere. Now what happened over here? Where did 60 go? We decided it needed to go at the bottom, right? Because it was the whole number. Well, now over here I'm saying 40% is 60. So the 60 is related to the 40. So the 60 in this case must go up here. Okay, so over there, when it's percent of a number, it went down here. When it's percent is a number, it went up above, because 40 is 60, so they have to be related. And now we solve again, right? We have this blank. I say, well, I already kind of know the multiplier. How does 40 become 100? Times 2.5. So times 2.5, 60 times 2.5. 60 times 2.5, calculator work, maybe not, 150. So 40% of 150 is 60, okay? Notice these numbers are different. I had 24 over there, now I got 150. It all depends on what I'm asked to do. Same decimal kind of situation, 40% of something is 60, okay? I need to put a something in there. I don't know what it is. Convert to decimal, 0.4 times something is equal to 60. Now, if we know about multiplication, and I said, I got one number, I got to multiply it by some other number to give me a product. If I know the product and I know one of the numbers that I'm multiplying, to find that other number, I'm going to use the inverse operation here. I'm going to use division. So this becomes, that number is 60 divided by 0.4. Okay, the 60 divided by the 0.4, and that of course is going to be 150. Right, 150 is 60 divided by 0.4. Okay, so there's that second way, changing it to a decimal. I'm using division here. Over here I use multiplication. Cross multiplication, same thing, 40% as a ratio or a fraction is equal to, and remember the 60 went above this time, I'm going to call this one y instead of x. Y, I don't know, because I said so. We'll use cross multiplication here as well. So, make our little cross. That orange isn't working real well, so I'll change colors, go to red maybe. 40 times y is equal to 100 times 60. Okay, so 40 times y is equal to 6,000, right? Again, 40 times some number. If I want just the number, I want to divide by the same thing that I'm multiplying by. So 40 y divided by 40 is equal to 6,000 divided by 40 So y is going to be, and when I divide that, we'll find out that it's 150. Okay, so using cross multiplication, we find that out. Using converting to decimal, we find it out. Using equivalent ratios, we find it out. Percent of, percent is. I'll do one more question over here just to kind of consolidate everything if I can. All right, again, you can erase this because you have it recorded. All right. If I said, right about now, if people have money in the market, they're making money or they're losing money, but I'm going to pretend that I'm making money because I like to make money more than I like to lose money. So I'm going to start with, let's say I have $200 in my account, okay? It's been a good day on the market. It increases by 15%. I made 15%. That's pretty good. If you can make like 5% in a year, you're doing well. But let's say I made it increased by 15%. How much do I have now? How do I figure this out? What is this question asking me? Okay, I have $200. I know I'm going to use that number. I know I'm going to use 15% somehow. But what do I have to do? Okay, so let's see what we have to do here. We want to know the value, the number that 15% really represents, right? So, percent of a number. It's what's 15% of 200. That's how much it's going to be. So, I'm saying 15% of $200. Okay. Whichever method you wanted to use, the equivalent ratio, the convert to decimal, or the cross multiplication, you're going to pick whichever one's your favorite. My favorite is the fastest one. Convert to decimal, multiply by the number. Okay, so 0.15 times 200 is 30. And now this is in dollars. Remember, we started in dollars. So 15% of 200 is $30. So now, do I now only have $30, or what's my investment worth now, right? I had 200 to begin with, so does it make sense that I only have 30 now? No, but what does make sense? I have 230, right? I have the investment plus, so the 200 plus the 30 is what I have now. I now have $230. I started with 200, it went up by 15%. 15% of 200 is 30 bucks. So now I have altogether $230. Okay. One other way to look at it, it's still percent of a number. I started with 200, I got 20% greater. So if you think about it, I now have 115% of $200. I have 115%. If it went up by 15%, the one here is the 100%. It's the 200 again. The 15% is going to make up the addition. So it's still percent of a number. It's just a different way of looking at it. And again, I like to convert to decimal and then multiply. It's up to you which way you want to use it. But if I were converting 115% into a decimal, remember, it's 115 divided by 100. That's how you get to the decimal, right? And when you divide by 100, if you think about the imaginary decimal being here, divide by 10, divided by 100, it's going to be 1.15 as a decimal. So 1.15 times 200 is what we're doing, $200. Okay? When I multiply that, it's going to take me right to my last step. I kind of get out of finding out what 30 is, adding it back to the original, getting to the total. 115% of 200 is going to be 230. Exactly, right off the bat. Okay, so if you understand what that means, if something increases by 20%, well, now it's 120% of what it was. If it increases by 15%, it's 115% of what it was. So I like this. It's more concise. As you can see, a little bit less writing, more efficient. But that's percent of a number, and percent is a number. Okay, so now we'll look at practicing some more questions for percent of, percent is. Look for our next post, and thanks for joining us again, and keep up the hard work.